this new series on environmental management. We are going to be looking at all the syllabus content for 2027 down to 2029. So the first content here that we're looking at is natural resources, and we're going to be looking at formation of rocks and every aspect of 1.1 of your syllabus, which is formation of rocks. Now you can pause the video here and read through the syllabus content that we need to cover in this video on formation of rocks. So we need to look at 1.1.1, 1.1.2, 1.1.3 and 1.1.4. So we're going to follow it serially. So without wasting so much time, let's move on to formation of igneous rocks. Now, formation of igneous rocks. Remember, there are three types of rocks, which I call the SIM. So you can use your SIM card to remember it. So S is for sedimentary, I for igneous, and M is for metamorphic rocks. Now let's look at the formation of the igneous rocks. There are two major examples of igneous rock your syllabus expects you to know, which are the granite and also the basalt. You should be able to know these two. Now, igneous rock is formed from the eruption. These are the key words: from the eruption and solidification of magma from beneath the earth. That is all you need to know. Now, molten rocks below the surface of the earth is what we call magma. Then once it erupts to the surface of the earth, is now referred to as a lava. Now, there are two forms of igneous rock, and we have the first one here is the extrusive igneous rock. Now, if it is formed if the rock cools quickly, you find out that it gives rise to small crystals. Now, extrusive igneous rocks are rocks that erupt to the surface before it solidifies. And because it erupts to the surface, you find out that it cools very fast. That will give rise to small crystals. An example of such rocks are your basalt. Then we have the intrusive igneous rock. These are rocks that cool slowly, and it does not erupt to the earth surface, so it solidifies beneath the earth surface, and because of that, cooling slowly, it gives rise to large crystals. An example are your granite. Now, next is the formation of sedimentary rocks. Now, this is sedimentary rocks are formed through weathering. Is the first process, weathering and erosion and transportation of sediment that have been weathered. Then this sediment will be deposited in water, and it occurs in layers and become compacted and cemented under pressure to form sedimentary rocks. Now, it follows a process, and you should know that. Your syllabus expects you to know that the first step in the formation of sedimentary rock is weathering, which is the breaking down of rocks. So you have rocks that have been broken down, other rocks, it can be igneous or sedimentary rocks. Once they get broken down, they will now lead to the formation of this, which we call the sediment, which are small rock particles. These sediments are now being eroded, they are being transported into water bodies, and once they get there, they deposit. So it becomes deposited, and that's the setting of the sediment, the settling of the sediment at the bottom of the sea or ocean or any water body. And once that is done, the next process that we set in is compaction, and lastly cementation. So we're going to look at the definition of all these keywords when we are going to look at rock cycle. So the stages is weathering, from weathering to erosion, erosion, deposition, deposition, you have compaction and cementation. That is the steps involved in the formation of sedimentary rocks. Now, formation of metamorphic rocks. Now, metamorphic rocks are formed from existing rocks. So these rocks can either be igneous or they can be sedimentary. Now, once you have an igneous or sedimentary rock and you exert high pressure, heat and pressure on the igneous and sedimentary rock, what it does is that the crystals in the rocks are going to change shape. They are going to melt, they are going to change shape without melting. So it won't melt, because if it melts, it becomes magma again. So it doesn't melt, but however, the crystal change shape, and once that is done, you have a metamorphic rock. Now, the major key word you should remember in the formation of metamorphic rock is that pressure and heat applied to other rocks, we convert it to metamorphic rock. Now the heat is from beneath the earth surface, and while pressure from above the earth surface. It changes the rock to either to metamorphic rock. So examples of these metamorphic rocks are your marble and slate. So take note, we've looked at examples of both igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks. Example of sedimentary rocks are your limestone. Please take note: limestone, sandstone, and lastly shale. These are the three examples your syllabus also need you to know. Now moving forward, we need to now look at the rock cycle. The rock cycle is simply represent the changes between the three types of rocks. So how the three types of rock can convert from one form to another. So you find out that sedimentary can become igneous, igneous can become metamorphic, sedimentary can become metamorphic, and igneous can become sedimentary. So is how this rock changes from one form to another. So we are going to now look at that here. So this is the rock cycle, and these are all the keywords that you need to know based on your syllabus on how the rock cycle work. Now we have the igneous rock here. How is igneous rock formed? Remember we said from eruption and solidification of molten magma. So you find the molten magma. Once it solidifies, it gives rise to crystal, either small or large crystal, based on how fast or how slow it cools. Remember we said when it cools very fast, it gives rise to small crystals. When it cools very slow, it gives rise to large crystals. Now, so how is magma formed? Magma is formed from melting. So if you have metamorphic rock melt, it gives you magma. If sedimentary rock melts too, it gives you magma. Other igneous rock can also melt to give magma. So this magma, once it erupts and solidify through crystallization, it now gives you igneous rock. So you find that a crystallization is when molten rock cool and solidify. So this igneous rock itself can undergo weathering, erosion, and deposition, which is one of the major criteria for formation of sedimentary rocks. So once igneous rock undergo weathering, erosion, and deposition, metamorphic rock too can undergo weathering, erosion, and deposition, and other sedimentary rock can also be weathered. Now all these processes will lead to the formation of sediment, and once the sediment get compacted and cemented, it will now give rise to sedimentary rocks. Now both igneous rocks and sedimentary rocks can be put under exposed to heat and pressure. What will now happen is that the crystals will now change shape, and once the crystals change shape, it will now give rise to metamorphic rock. Now you see, that is how the whole process moves. So first, we've looked at these keywords. You can pause them and read through the keywords. It's very important. I've gone through the sample past papers, and these keywords were a major part of the exam. Now, so crystallization, let me just run through it, is molten rocks, when molten rocks cool and solidify, while weathering is the breakdown of rock into smaller pieces on the surface of the earth, while erosion has to do with rock particles are transported by gravity, water, and ice. That is the transportation of rock particles. Transportation here is the carrying of sediment, which are rock particles, by river, wind, wave, or glaciers to new location. Deposition is the dropping or laying down of sediment after they have been transported by water, wind, or ice. Then sedimentation here is when rock particles are deposited in layers. Remember, sedimentary rocks, one of their characteristics is that it occurs in layers, and it also contains fossils, because the remains of dead plant and animals also play a major part in the cementation process. While compaction is when rock particles are pressed together and water is being removed from it. Then lastly, cementation is when these sediments are joined by minerals. Now we need to look at the last part. This should be the last part of your 1.1 formation of rocks, which is classifying rocks as permeable and impermeable. Now, what is permeability? Permeability is the ability of water to pass through pore spaces of rocks and soil. That's permeability. So some substances are permeable because they allow water to pass through them, while certain substances are impermeable because they do not allow water to pass through them. So permeability is the ability of water to pass through the pore spaces of rocks and soil. Now, permeability of rocks. Permeable rocks and impermeable rocks. So all the examples of rocks we've looked at, we need to classify them as either permeable or impermeable. Now, the only permeable rocks you have here is the sedimentary rocks. An example are the limestone and sandstone. So I tell my students, just remember stone. All the examples that have stone are sedimentary rocks. So limestone and sandstone are permeable, while impermeable rocks here are your igneous rock. Both the granite and basalt are impermeable. Metamorphic rocks such as marble and slate are impermeable. Sedimentary rocks like shale is also impermeable. So we are done with this part, but next lesson we are going to move on to syllabus content 1.2, where we are going to look at extraction of rocks, ore and minerals. So see you then. Thank you.